Porky's Corner is proud to be sponsored by Spartan Site Solutions. They are specialists in civil engineering and demolition contracts for the construction industry. Interested parties should visit their website or contact Porky's Corner for a referral at porkycorner@mail.com.
Hello, all you hardcores out there. How are we doing? It's Russ here from Porky's Corner, biggest goblin. We say the things on here nobody dare say, and you've had a right treat tonight. A four-parter with the main man, so we should be enjoying it. Right, let's get down to the juicy bits. This is the part I like best. Feeding time. Right, here we go. Right. Frankie Gavin. I like Frankie Gavin.
Yeah, I do.
I did some off my own back when I worked for Dennis. I mentioned it earlier in a video with Mike here, so I don't need to go down that avenue again. You know about it. The fight got pulled. We're 2 weeks ago. That's just the nature of the beast, isn't it? But
It happens.
It happens. Frankie's come out. I was devastated, heartbroken. Terry Chappendama will tell you. I felt like sticking nuts straight in Dennis's kisser and Daryl Johnson, but it's just frustrating, isn't it? You know what I mean? It's a frustrating sport. But Frankie Gavin's come out and he said, look, bottom line is Conor Benn's cheated. He's a cheat. He's done it twice. He did it straight-faced. Everybody's seen the interview. No messing about. Former British champion. Went to Olympics. He breezed through that gold medal thing in 2007, didn't he, in Chicago?
Brilliant, mate. It was absolutely
It
brilliant.
was untouchable for about 3 years in amateurs. One, nobody took around with him or could get near him, could they? For that period of time.
Sykes knew him, obviously from England squad and various things, and I had a good chat to Frankie Gavin. Actually, it's the only time I've spoken to him face to face was when Gary boxed in Leeds at the Leeds Direct, and Frankie was there. I can't remember if he was on the bill or not. I should do a better job of remembering that. I think he was, and I just had a good chat to him, and it was nice. He was just friendly. He was approachable, and I spoke to him about 5 or 10 minutes. And just stick with the way from the Sykes fight. So just a good guy, and how incredibly talented was Frankie. It didn't kind of work for him in the pros. Sometimes you got to tick all the boxes. Sometimes everything just has to work at the right time. But world amateur champion, first one we've ever had. When he was in motion and when he was at his best, it was something to behold, wasn't he?
Well, they reckon he were Lomachenko's level on his level in amateurs, don't they? For that couple of years. We don't rank number one across all them agencies for amateurs and that. And they were, well, I know for a fact Dennis went out on a limb to sign him and Billy Joe on aeroplane going to Olympics to give them all a tag what. I said, who did you want? He said, I wanted Frankie Gavin and Billy Joe. And he says, and that's who everybody wanted. Not big, even though Pricey got a bronze, but they were the superstars going to Olympics, Billy Joe and him, because they were ranked number one in the weights, weren't they, in that?
They were great. I know Frankie struggled with the weight, didn't he? And he never kind of looked comfortable at the weight he ended up in the pros. But I didn't know he was coaching, by the way. I don't mean that to be rude. It's just because Frankie's watching this. It's because I'm not close to the sport on that kind of level now. Fighters coming through, I'm no longer close to it. But you'd want Frankie coaching, you wouldn't, if you're a fighter, just because he's authentic, he's honest, but he's a fantastic and talented textbook fighter, wasn't he? He was brilliant.
Oh, yeah. Terry will be pulling my leg about this. He always gives me a bit of stick about it, because for being a Frankie Gavin fan, because it was a bit of a letdown in his career for me personally. It's like glass was just not even half full, was it?
I always said to you, it's the transition sometimes from the amateurs to the pros. It works for some and doesn't work for others. I think there's two broad reasons for that. One of them is because you have to get the right transition. And that's when it's a transition to the pros. You don't change everything that you do, but you have to learn certain new things and tweak certain things, but you're still essentially the same fighter. There's a transition part of it. But there are also, and I'm not going to say Audley Harrison and Frankie Gavin were the same level because clearly, even though Audley was a gold medalist, Gavin was a much more talented fighter, and of course he was smaller. But there are also some fighters, no disrespect to Frankie, their styles are made for amateur boxing. They're made for that rapid fencing, fast style that you can have success over, whether it's the 4-2s that they used to do or the 3-3s. There were just some styles that are absolutely made for amateur boxing that don't quite transcend into the pros. And I think Frankie's might have been one of those. Audley Harrison's certainly was a style that was made for the
I think
4-2s.
Tom Stoker were one of those as well. Tom Stoker.
Tom Stoker's one of those. And how many times have you heard me say I'm like a stuck record? And it's one of the reasons
Harrison.
I'd love to have trained someone like Frankie and as an unknown coach, really. But I'll tell you why. Because I've always said the same thing. You hear me all the time, right? If you're not a big puncher and you're a master boxer, you have to have a real core strength. You have to have that core strength and base to be able to compete in the pros over 12-3s eventually. And some fighters don't seem to have that core strength where they can get bullied. You know, you see them get bullied in the professional ranks. I mean, who can forget Martin Rogan bullying Audley Harrison? There was about, 10 million levels technically.
Big Rogie.
Big Rogie. The difference technically between Rogie and Audley was like, it was that he couldn't measure the size of the gap between those two, but professional boxing is completely different. And Audley didn't really have massive core strength, but there are some pro fighters who just don't have that core strength when they go over to the pros. And people say, well, how come they were successful amateurs? Because it's a different event. It's a sprint. It's over 3 rounds. And you can just let everything out in 3 rounds and you can get the points in the bag, the 2 rounds in the bag, do what you need to do, and you get the fight, don't you? Professional boxing is more of an endurance. And people always used to say to me, what do you think is one of the key differences between the pros and the amateurs? And what I always used to say was, it took me too long to explain this, but the amateur boxing is about essentially being able to give it. You land more punches than your opponent in 3 rounds. It really is a sprint. Even at the world level, it's a sprint. So it's about being able to give it. But professional boxing, it's more about being able to take it, isn't it? Because it's such a physically draining thing to do for 30 minutes or 36 minutes to be able to do what you can do for 9 minutes. So I'm oversimplifying it. There are a lot more things to it, but amateur boxing I always thought was more about your output and what you give, but professional boxing was more about being able to take it. And going back to the core strength is something that's absolutely critical for people who aren't punchers, who are effectively craftsmen. And I know a couple of young pros at the moment, I won't mention names, who I know personally, they haven't got that core strength. And I just watch them, I'm like, you're not being transitioned right, you're not being coached right. And when you come up against someone who probably don't have the skill set you've got, but who's physically stronger, you're going to get ragged all over the place. And I can see it coming. And I think that sometimes happens. But then I think of a fighter like Pernell Whitaker, the majestic Pernell Whitaker. He transitioned from the amateurs to the pros. He obviously became even more of a defensive genius than he was in the amateurs. But he had the core strength, he had the low center of gravity, and he had the core strength. And he never really got bullied, did he? He never really got bullied in the pros, didn't Pernell? Certainly at lightweight and light welterweight. And I think there was an element with Frankie, whereas he never really fully developed that core strength and that grounding. And he got bullied by guys like Sam Eggington, didn't he? And skill-wise, that should have never really happened. And there was also rumours about Frankie not being the most dedicated of trainers. But ultimately, good guy, incredible amateur, and a former world amateur champion, the first one we've ever had. So that's going to stand forever, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it is. And he'll always have that, but like I said, glasses always half full for me. I expected him after all hype to just run through everybody and just take them apart, you know, like Lomachenko.
Yeah. I think.
Oh, well. Right, here we go. Max. Denison Max back
Max.
on. Max has got a license with board. He's 1-1. He's going pro.
I didn't know that about the license. Me and Max chat all the time, but to be honest, Max and I are friends, and we speak less about boxing these days than we do about. And when I say boxing, we speak less about Max's boxing than we do about anything. We barely touch on it now, and that's because we've kind of some friendships land on an agreement, don't they? Which is, I've kind of got a different view to you, but I respect your opinion for wanting to do it. You respect my stance for being really open about it and being really honest about it. So you don't agree to disagree. That's a bit strong, but you kind of don't touch on it too much. And all I've said to Max is, if you are going to continue as a pro, or what I effectively want to say is go pro, because I think the level Max has been boxing at in Europe is not really what I'd consider a professional level. And I think Max will acknowledge that as well, by the way. All I say to him is make sure, first of all, you've got a trainer who's going to look after you. And I mean look after you. Not, see it as a few quid or whatever.
Not rinsing.
Not rinsing, not see it as a few quid. And it
Well,
sounds
who
like
is it we're doing down there? I'll not say his name, but we know we were, don't we?
yeah, we know we were. And I think it sounds like Kieran Conway's dad's doing a really good job with him, and he sounds like a good guy. I've never met him, but credit there, so that's good. But what I've also said to him is, and this really applies to his manager and his promoter, is you have to, and it's stating the obvious, you have to be very careful how you match someone like Max. And when I say someone like Max, I'm talking about someone who's an inexperienced boxer. You have to be very careful how you match him. And if he gets himself in shape and if he works hard and he gets some weight off and he's being looked after and he gets matched well, I'll certainly be getting a couple of tickets to go see Max Box. Definitely.
We will. Do you see it ending well for Max?
Listen, I'm not being diplomatic because it's Max, because Max talks about Max. We'll talk about Max. Max and I, we're pretty open when it comes to stuff like that. What it boils down to is what's your definition of success? Yeah. Everybody has
hope to achieve. What does Dennis hope to achieve? Right. Putting Max on his shows.
Well, what you just said there, we've just gone from, for context, we've gone from Frankie Gavin to Max Jenkins, and I don't mean that in any disparaging way.
Obviously, we'll go after this.
So what I've just said, right, is what's your measure of success? So your measure of success with Frankie Gavin was you feel that the glass was half empty, and I think that's
a world champion with 10 defenses.
Absolutely, because he was the best amateur in the world. End of. And he was a fantastic prospect, and he didn't really achieve, did he? So the glass is half empty. So the question for Max is, what's the measure of success for Max? And my measure of success, and Max, I know you're watching this because you know all these videos, I've said it to your face. My measure of success for Max would be he has 4 or 5 nights where he has fun, he doesn't get hurt, he gets involved in a couple of good bouts, he has a good night for his partner and his friends and the people who come to watch him box, and he enjoys it, and he looks back a little bit like I do with my amateur career. I didn't win any titles. I look back and I say, you know what? I did it, got the t-shirt, I enjoyed it, and I had my wins and my losses, and I was more than happy, Russell, with my amateur career, more than happy with that. And that has to be, for me, that has to be Max's measure of success. Max's measure of success should not be getting a big night against an unbeaten prospect on Sky Sports. That should not be his measure of success. His measure of success should not be, I'm getting 20 grand for a fight. That shouldn't be his measure of success. His measure of success should be, I'm going to get matched at my level and I'm going to have some good nights, win and lose, and I'm going to come out of boxing safely.
Yeah, yeah. Well, good luck to Max. At least he wants to do it and take the risk.
And he's a nice kid, and I've got all the time in the world for him.
Yeah, all right. AJ Bacoli, WBA have called it for final eliminator. Well, Joshua said, didn't he, last week, it's about legacy and he wants to be world champion again. Well, they've called that on, but whether they're going to go for that or Ngannou, it remains to be seen. But already the matchroom calls are saying there's no money in the fight and you don't bring no to the table, Coley.
It's
an hard fight for Joshua, that, isn't it?
It's what we've just been saying about, slightly different because Ngannou's 0-1, but it's what we've been saying about Conor Benn, isn't it?
Well, Ngannou would get wrote off against Bacoli, wouldn't he? Come on.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is Ngannou? If you listed me now 10 heavyweights, top 10 heavyweights, not
What do they think about Ngannou getting a ranking? Bacoli and Billy Nelson, they must be spitting.
It's the similar situation to what you just asked me about Gary Sykes. He was a clean athlete who was a former elite amateur who best paid over 27 grand. What do you think of Conor Benn earning all this money? It's injustice of life. It's not a level playing field, but Ngannou and AJ, whoever you like it, I like it. Terry, Rico, Ken, Max, Jerry, Andy, the commission, like it or not, it'll be a big commercial event. The Saudis want it. Everybody gets paid. Everybody's happy. And the people who cry and scream for the purity of boxing to be upheld don't matter because it's a cliche to say that boxing is a business. Boxing's always been a business from day one, but it's also been a sport. And now it's also been competitive, but now ultimately boxing is purely business. Because I've got a question for you actually, Russell.
Go on.
See, I was thinking about this today, right? And it's not a trick question, by the way. So we've had some big cards in Saudi, haven't we, in the last couple of years, whatever. But since the Fury Ngannou bill, yeah, and Fury Ngannou bill, and obviously the what's it called, Day of Reckoning bill, we've probably had 8 or 9 big fights, what would be headline fights, haven't we?
Yeah.
How many of those fights? It's not a trick question. How many of those fights were great fights? Real great fights.
Great fights.
I'm talking Foreman, Lyle, Ali Fraser, Holmes Norton, Bo Holyfield. Fights that were thrilling, breathtaking, blew us away. How many were great fights?
Ron Lyle and Foreman were great.
No, but how many of the ones we've seen on those 2 Saudi bills?
I haven't seen any what were great. None. The Wilder fight.
Do you see my point? Do you see my point? It's piss poor, isn't it? In terms of you can get the big names and you can give it as much hype as you want, but we haven't seen any great fights, have we?
No, we haven't. No, we've seen mismatches. We saw Wilder there get his, but they're all picking the pensions up, aren't they? All of them.
And that's my point.
It's no young heavies.
It's all about big names, rolling them out, but we haven't seen truly competitive, mouth-watering fights. And I'll tell you something, and this is just my opinion, I'm not a pessimist, right? Fury and Usyk won't be a great fight, mate. It'll be a maul, it'll be messy, and I think it'll be piss poor, pal, honestly. But do you see where I'm coming from? It's like how much money has been invested in those 2 shows and all those big fights? How many fights were absolutely just edge of the seat? I'm going to watch it again and again and again and again. None.
Yeah.
There's no great fight. There's no great fights at heavyweight now, mate. Those days are gone. And the fights that could give us great fights, they're not making the right fights. You see what I'm saying? If under the microscope, if you put Riddick Bowe against Evander Holyfield at the time, both were unbeaten, weren't they, when Holyfield was champion? Riddick Bowe was #1 contender. And that was just an unbelievable fight, wasn't it? It was just like you get two guys at their best, unbeaten for the heavyweight championship of the world. It's electric. It's the best sport in the world. But what we're getting is we're getting Tyson Fury against a guy who's come from MMA. Whatever you think about that fight, it was dire. It was dire. There was about 5 punches around landed. We had Joshua against Wallin. Did Wallin even land a shot? Did he even land a punch in that fight?
No.
We got Deontay Wilder with his stiff wooden legs was garbage against Joseph Parker.
39.
Cabell knocked out, was it Magdamulov or whatever it's called? He was absolutely horrendous. He was like Frankenstein, wasn't he? Just walking around like that. And we've got Martin Bakole, who was about 23 stone against Takam. We've got Gerald Miller. You see where I'm going with this, can't you? We've got Gerald Miller, who was like 23 stone.
Drug cheat.
Blubber, drug cheat against Daniel Dubois. Who else have we had in all that? We've had Philip Demore. I mean, oh my God, against Hergovic.
Mark Demore.
Mark Demore, Philip Mark, whatever. Is that forgettable? I forgot his name. But do you see where I'm coming? Do you see where I'm coming from? We've had Junior Farr. I saw him warming up on the pads at the public workout. He decided to switch southpaw. He looked like a guy who was white collar. Like I've never seen anyone that level before on such a big night. Frank Sanchez looked all right, but how many of them were really compelling fights?
Frank Sanchez is approaching 32 now.
But did you watch any of those? I know I'm stuck in a certain era and I've gone off tangent, but you see what I'm saying? What was being said is this is the greatest card in the history of boxing.
They give it the eye, haven't they, on all the channels, all of them. They're all responsible, you know. This is why point I want to make is the GAD. You know, let's see what we've got here. The GAD overload. Is he the PR guy for Tyson and Joshua and Eddie and Frank? Because all he's doing is going into bat with them. And it looks to me like all the other media guys, they all look a bit pissed off with him now. Because he's got his tongue that far up them all. He's in all the camps and he's the PR for them all. And it's the videos he does outside of TalkSport that annoys me because it's licking on a massive scale. The man is a human monitor lizard. I want him checked for medical science.
He's cringeworthy, he's embarrassing, he's hyperbolic, he's nonsense. And he's easily pleased then if he really believes everything that he seems as great as he is. And I just find it embarrassing because he certainly knows boxing and not technical side of boxing, but he knows boxing, he knows the history of boxing, he knows the mechanisms of how the sport works. He's an educated man. He's not an idiot. But yeah, the way he's like hypes up everything, it's just like cringeworthy. And it goes back to my question, what would be Gareth A. Davis's answer if I said to him, did we see any great fights on those two massive bills, certainly on the day of reckoning, that we're going to be talking about in 30 years' time, like we talk about Riddick Bowe, Evander Holyfield? Are we going to be talking about any of those fights in 30 years' time?
No.
So what we're saying then is, and I'm a cynic sometimes, we're saying the greatest card ever assembled didn't give us one great fight. That is what we're saying, isn't it?
Yeah, but they all were on that aeroplane, weren't they? Bricktop, Eddie Hills, Andy Ayling, and all the rest of the monitor lizards. They were all on that airplane toasting. But they didn't put the pictures up on their Instagrams of them toasting drinks, did they? What did they do? They just put one. Somebody put a video up of them all sat in different seats, you know, in them first class seats.
Oh, that
But they were toasting on the plane, so why don't they put them photos up of them toasting all the way to Saudi while licking each other's insides, inside and out? Rinse your mouth out with TCP, lot of yous.
How many fans of the boxers went over to that show? It's a genuine question because I saw a lot of obviously locals, you know, a lot of the Saudis were there.
Friends of all the promoters and all that got tickets to go over there.
Didn't seem to see any genuine UK fans. I might have missed it, or you know, fans of the fighters, Wilder, American fans, US fans, and
Well, you know
Cuban
why,
fans.
don't you, mate? You know why? You can't get any Stellar over there in Riyadh or any Sniff.
Yeah, it's. I just thought it was I just it kind of like it's almost like self-fulfilling what I'm saying. So we had the greatest. Do you see the irony of what I'm saying? So we had the greatest card ever assembled. Yeah. We didn't get one great fight. So my next question would be, do you think that's because we didn't have any great fighters on that bill? And if we didn't have any great fighters on the bill, how is it the greatest card ever assembled? Do you see where I'm coming from?
Is it? All right.
Now,
Now, here we go. All right. We're coming to crunchy bits. But first off, Joshua Ngannou looks like it's set in stone now, March 8th or something. It's the same day as Ali fought Fraser, isn't it? The first 1971 March 8th. I know that we're going to get a lot of reminders about that. Wilder Zhang's looking possible for undercard. They're trying to resurrect Wilder Joshua, aren't they? But if Zhang wins, they've got Joshua Zhang, haven't they? So either way, Joshua's on an easy win. He's got Ngannou and Wilder Zhang next. So he's got 2 more wins, Joshua. So that'll take him to 6 knockovers, won't it, really, before Usyk or Fury?
Well, Wilder won't beat Zhang.
No. So it could be Zhang Joshua then, couldn't it? So, but by the time they fight, it'll be 42-year-old, won't he, Zhang?
Yeah, I mean, he's certainly ancient, is he? I mean, like I said, style-wise, I think he's too strong and he's quite crafty. So I think he'd see Wilder's right hand coming a mile off, although, you know, he's still punching the guy. But I just think his legs are all over the place, Wilder. I think I've never rated him, as you know. I think Zhang would just, I think he'd just catch everything and he'd walk him down and he'd batter him actually. AJ, I think AJ will beat Ngannou. My God. So what do we do? What? And then the next question, I guess, is if AJ beats Ngannou's then 0-2, who's he fighting next? So we're going to still trying to flog him, drag him out a little bit more. But AJ, you're right. Is it legacy or is it
money?
Ridiculous wealth, and we know it is, don't we?
Ridiculous wealth, but he's already came out and said that months ago, didn't he, Joshua, in a press conference?
Yeah, he did, yeah.
And securing his future, but it also says here in Forbes it's worth 215 million. So how many generations are AJ's do we need to secure?
How much money do you
After this next year, they're saying it could be worth 300 million, aren't they? So it is what it is, isn't it? So
yeah, well, you're not going to turn it down, are you? I mean, ultimately,
no.
it's up to him. I just don't class him as. I'm someone who likes the history of boxing. I'm someone who likes to watch. When I watch a fight, yeah. When I watch fights, I watch a lot of old stuff. But when I watch a fight, I don't care how much someone's worth. I just want to see greatness. For me, sport is about Maradona and Pele and seeing the best at their best against the best. You know, that's what we want. And I'm a football fan, you know, I'm using analogies. That's what we want to see, don't we? We want to see McEnroe and Bjorn Borg. We want to see Federer and all those guys. And we want to see the best against the best. That's all I'm interested in. I couldn't care less how much someone's worth or how much someone makes. And that was kind of the point about the day of reckoning, because we might be seeing the best, whatever today's best are, but we're not seeing the best against the best. So we're not seeing greatness, and we're not seeing fighters have an opportunity for greatness. Fury and Usyk, you could say, well, that counts as everything you've just said, Jules, because we got the number 1 against the number 2. But are they 2 fighters past the best? I think Fury, could argue, he's definitely past his best. And I don't know. I just think there's something about seeing the best. It's like I always think of Ray Leonard, Thomas Hearns. You saw the best welterweights at their best against each other, and you got a great fight. And there's just something about watching fighters who's a little bit long in the tooth, like Pacquiao and Mayweather, and it's a bit like going to it's crap, and you go to a restaurant and you know what I mean, it's got a big reputation. You have a meal and it's pretty crap. Actually, you think you feel a bit disappointed. And when I watch, yeah, I mean, imagine Amir Khan against Kell Brooks 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago. Oh, imagine how good we could have got 2 or 3 fights from those guys. How electric that would have been. I mean, I was there when Nigel Benn fought Chris Eubank at the NEC the first time. I was there. I was a student. It was brilliant, mate. It was just like they wanted to kill each other. They're not lumps out of each other that night, did Eubank and Ben? It was intense. It was brutal. It was savage. Isn't that what we want from sport? Did we not want to see Wilder and Joshua 7 years ago?
Yeah.
Who gives a toss now if AJ fights Wilder? Who genuinely gives a toss?
Nobody. Not now. So we agree heavyweights nowadays are fighting until they're too old and shot, and the rankings mean shit when we've got mandatories and they're making mandatories have rematches, which goes against the grain with me.
Yeah.
Which brings me to the main course, the IBO, who I've bigged up for a long time, as you know, and you haven't.
I disagree with you fundamentally.
I think I'm a bit biased. I don't know, really. You know, when I got in touch with Ed Levine, I said, right, I want to make Frankie Gavin, blah, 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 IBO, and blah, blah, blah. Dennis wanted to go for Amir Khan, Frankie Gavin. That was the plan down the line. Anyway, we're all set in stone, and Frankie Gavin didn't do tickets and 2 weeks to go, blah, blah, blah. We know what happened. But the IBO, I've always been a fan of it. I always thought it were all right. And I always said, well, why not? Just because they don't do mandatories. Well, look, the IBO have just let themselves down here, just like the other lot, the other 4 governing bodies, WBC, WBA, WBO, IBF. And now the IBO, they're all a shower of shit. Prince Patel fought a guy ranked 180 odd on BoxRec. I don't know what the guy was ranked on IBO because I hadn't even looked, but Prince Patel's now a world champion, like Manny Pacquiao, Mayweather, and a few of us, Vladimir, Joshua, all had that belt. And go on, I'll leave it with you.
First of all, the IBO, and you know me, I hate belts. You know, this is where I always have a different opinion to you when you say he's beat 12 world champions, he's beat 9. It's like, no, they beat.
You don't like 9. That, do you?
I hate it because I said they beat 12 and 9 organizational belt holders. They're not world champions. It's you
not
try.
Everybody's record's piss poor who's beat over 10 world champions, though, is it?
No. I'm not suggesting that you have to be a certain caliber to win a belt. I'm not suggesting that you're not, but you can be maybe not in the 7th or 8th best in the world and win a belt, can't you? It don't make you a world champion. Boxing's on this to itself, right? That's fine. We all understand that. I can't go back 150 years, 100 years. I can't do that. But when you try and explain to someone that, you know, there's one world snooker champion, there's one World Cup winner, there's one Olympic gold medalist in the 100 meters. By the way, there's about 18 weight divisions, 5 champions and 3 regulars and 1 interim and in bronze, gold medal. It's knackers, right? It's just nonsense, right? So Prince Patel is no more to blame than anybody else. So first of all, what the IBO have done is to give some kind of legitimacy, is to give a belt to an Usyk, for example. Yep. Now, Alexander Usyk has not like dreamed of becoming an IBO champion as he went into the heavyweight division, has he? It's like, I want to go fight for an IBO belt. He just dreams of being the best, and then he dreams of being a champion. And it's like when the IBF came into ascendancy in '83, they did a very smart thing, and they gave the belt to Larry Holmes, get the best heavyweight in the world to have the belt, and it gives it some kind of legitimacy. So one of the defenses I've heard for people who dare criticise Prince Patel is to say, Anthony Joshua's been an IBO champion. Manny Pacquiao's been an IBO. I'm making these names up. Manny Pacquiao's been an IBO champion.
Vladimir.
And it gives and it gives casual fans who should know better, it gives them some kind of argument to give the belt legitimacy. Now, first of all, the WBA, WBC, WBO, and IBF, they all recognize each other. And they're also, they kind of globally recognize each other. But those four don't recognize the IBO. But I'm not going to say the IBO is garbage compared to the IBF. You know where I'm coming from. I just don't recognize it. Now, what we have is a situation with Prince Patel. Whatever you think of him as a fighter, it's irrelevant to me. He's fought a guy at bantamweight, okay, who on paper had a decent record. If you look at the record and break it down, I don't think he's beat anybody in the top 300 or something. It's a shambolic. It was a padded record. It's like Peter Dobson's record. It's a padded record, and it means very, very little. The one real test that Prince Patel's had, he fought an half decent guy, and he got well beat. He got shut out over 12 rounds, but that didn't make him a bad fighter. But what we've got is we've got Prince Patel who's fought this guy. This guy is not only pretty poor, ranked 180 by the box rec, as you just said, is also 7.5 pound over the limit. This is a vacant belt, and he's 7.5 pound over the limit. So the only person who could win that belt is Prince Patel. So Prince Patel's beat a guy who can't even make the weight above. Never mind the bantamweight. He's actually a featherweight. He can't even make super bantamweight. He's a featherweight. And he's fought this guy who's very, very poor. And now he's calling himself a world champion. Now, do you see my point? And I sent you a message, didn't I, saying similar. Do you see how futile these belts have become?
Yeah.
You see how meaningless the belts have become. I think Terry always says the same thing, doesn't he? Just chuck the belts in the bin. Like J.O. Pataya, they stripped him. Don't fight for it again. Chuck it in the bin. Who gives a toss? Throw it in the bin. And it's nonsense. You can't explain to someone coming in who wants to get involved in boxing. You can't try to explain to them. Okay, if I was talking to someone to explain this to my niece, who's Alice, who's 7. I've got a 7-year-old niece, right? Great niece. If I was explaining this to her, I'd say, right, Alice, so there's that way, okay, there were 5 world champions. Be confused, like, I don't know what you're talking about. It'd be like, well, she'd say, but there's only one world. Now is the 5 champions. So do you see where I'm coming from, Russell? It's like, how can the term world champion, they're not world champions. There's very few world champions. Katie Taylor's a world champion. She holds all the belts. She's best in the world. Cameron was before her. Okay. We don't know who the heavyweight champion of the world is right now. And if Fury and Usyk tomorrow, okay, I'll give you a scenario, and I'm running out of time. If Fury and Usyk tomorrow give all the belts up, yep.
Yeah.
Give them all up and still fight, and Fury beats Usyk convincingly. Who's the heavyweight champion of the world? Fury. So the belts are meaningless, aren't they?
They mean nothing now after all this lobbying and backhanders and
meaningless. They've become so.
They need to bring all the belts and just start ring mag. Have one man as champion.
I think so. I that's how I would do it, and just let the best fight the best. The greedy sanctioning bodies have really killed boxing. They're now adding different belts at bridgerweight. We haven't even got enough bridgerweights to fight, and we're actually adding belts. And it's as bad as it gets. I think boxing needs a reset. I think the weight divisions need a reset, and we need to clean it up. I know we're nearly done for time now, but IBO champion, get the fuck out of here. That's what I say, mate.
Yeah, I agree with that, man. I agree. It's I'm not keen on him anyway. I think he's slimy. And if ever I bump into him, I'll just tell him what I think. If he starts, well, I don't want to have to crack him because he's small anyway. I
don't care. I don't particularly bother either way. I just don't. You're not a world champion, and I'll debate it with you anytime you want. And if you can tell me how you're a world champion when you're not ranked in the top 20 in the world yourself, and before anyone jumps online and says he's ranked number 9 by the IBO or number 12 by the WBA.
Number 1 and number 2 fighting for it. It's because they don't do that.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying, Russell. It proves my point, right? Independently, you're not ranked in the top 20 in the world, and your opponent were ranked number 180.
Yeah, I know.
How are you a world champion? Get a grip. Get a grip.
All right, then.
Done.
Thanks for coming on. We've had a 4-parter when we've let rip. You take care. Bless.
Absolutely. See you, buddy. Cheers, Russell. Thank you, everybody.
Well, Julian there, spitting bare facts and stats tonight. That's how I like it. Pop, pop, bang. Thanks for liking and subscribing and leaving a comment. Booyaka! Peace out. See you in the morning, Monday. Pop, pop, bang.